November 14, 1969. A Saturn V rocket, taller than a 36-story building, stands poised on Florida's rain-slick launch pad. Apollo 11 has already made history, but today's mission, Apollo 12, will prove the moon program wasn't a one-time miracle. No one expects that within seconds of liftoff, a flash of lightning will plunge the spacecraft into darkness, trip every alarm in mission control, and nearly end America's lunar ambitions. This is the forgotten near disaster NASA quietly downplayed. The night a moon rocket became a lightning rod, and the Apollo program almost died on the pad. The summer of 1969 crowned the United States with lunar glory. Apollo 11's giant leap silenced Cold War critics, but NASA knew one victory wouldn't secure funding. Congress demanded repeatable success, a true lunar program, not a stunt. Apollo 12 would be that proof. Commanded by veteran Pete Conrad, with pilot Dick Gordon and lunar module pilot Alan Bean, the mission aimed for precision, land within walking distance of Surveyor 3, a robotic probe already on the moon. The hardware was familiar, a 363-foot Saturn V, the most powerful machine ever built, generating 7.5 million pounds of thrust. But launch day brought a new variable: weather. Morning storms rolled across the Cape. Sheets of rain soaked the pad while low clouds dragged their bellies over the ocean. Lightning advisories flickered on monitors inside the Launch Control Center. Some engineers urged delay. Flight Director Jerry Griffin weighed the risks. Weather officers argued the cells were moving east. NASA's launch window was tight. Every delay rippled through mission schedules worldwide. At 11:22 a.m., he gave the word: proceed. The Saturn V's 5 F1 engines ignited with a roar that turned rain to steam. The rocket lumbered upward through low clouds, a skyscraper of flame. 36 seconds after liftoff, flash. A brilliant spear of lightning leapt from cloud to rocket to pad. Inside the command module, every alarm light bloomed red. Guidance systems flickered, fuel cells dropped offline. For an instant, the crew stared into darkness, their spacecraft dead while still accelerating through the sky. Before controllers could react, a second bolt struck, 52 seconds after launch, riding the exhaust plume like a wire straight to the heavens. Mission control filled with alarm tones. Telemetry screens went blank. "We've lost the platform," someone shouted. Flight Director Griffin's voice cut through the chaos. "Stand by." The spacecraft hurtled upward, its massive engines oblivious to the electrical storm. For the astronauts, only a handful of backup instruments still glowed. Pete Conrad radioed calmly, "We just lost all our fuel cells. I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out." In the back row of Mission Control sat ECOM controller John Aaron. Scanning failing telemetry, he remembered a simulation months earlier when similar data dropouts were solved by a little-known command. He keyed his headset. "Flight, try SCE to AUX." The call baffled even the crew. Alan Bean asked, "What the hell is SCE?" Conrad glanced at the switch labeled Signal Conditioning Equipment. Bean flipped it. Instantly, instrumentation flickered back to life. Against all odds, Apollo 12 kept climbing, shaken but alive. High above the Atlantic, Apollo 12 roared toward orbit, but nobody in Mission Control relaxed. Inside the command module, Conrad, Gordon, and Bean stared at panels that had been black only seconds before. Guidance computers were rebooting, gyros realigning, voltage regulators humming back to life. Controllers scanned a forest of screens. Oxygen pressure stable, but 2 fuel cells still flickered in and out. Flight Director Jerry Griffin faced a decision few directors ever dream of: abort the mission and risk a dangerous ocean splashdown, or trust that the giant rocket could keep climbing. "Flight, we're stable," John Aaron reported, his voice flat, almost casual after the drama. Griffin nodded. "We're staying with it." Later analysis would reveal that the Saturn V itself had never been in danger. The lightning strikes had traveled down the rocket's ionized exhaust plume, essentially a giant wire, triggering dozens of false alarms and knocking fuel cells offline. The spacecraft's thick aluminum skin had acted like a Faraday cage, shielding the crew. But at that moment, no one knew that. 2 hours later, Apollo 12 settled into Earth orbit for a planned systems check. Engineers combed through every telemetry stream, searching for hidden damage. The decision to continue was not automatic. Apollo 12 carried an SIVB third stage that would later slam into the moon for seismic tests. If any guidance electronics were unstable, the risk to the crew and to the moon landing itself was immense. Pete Conrad, unfazed, cracked a joke that mission transcripts still preserve. "I think we got hit by lightning." Alan Bean quipped back, "You're one cool cucumber, Pete." The humor helped, but each man knew how narrowly they'd escaped becoming the first astronauts lost to a weather report. With all systems verified, Mission Control finally gave the go for translunar injection. The giant SVB engine fired, and Apollo 12 left Earth orbit on a 3-day path to the moon, the very program it had nearly doomed. Even on the quiet coast of Florida, few outside NASA realized how close the mission had come to catastrophe. News reports mentioned minor electrical disturbances, burying the drama under routine jargon. The agency had no desire to publicize a near failure so soon after the triumph of Apollo 11. 3 days later, Conrad and Bean piloted the lunar module Intrepid toward the ocean of storms. Their target, Surveyor 3, an unmanned probe that had been sitting in the dust for 2.5 years. Apollo 11 had landed miles off course. Apollo 12 aimed to touch down within walking distance of a single scientific relic. Guidance was flawless. Conrad radioed, "That's one small step for a little fella," joking about his own 5'6" frame. Minutes later, the crew walked across a desolate plain straight to the waiting surveyor. The landing accuracy amazed engineers back on Earth, proof the program could place astronauts precisely where science required. During their 31-hour stay, the astronauts collected rock samples, set up seismometers, and even removed pieces of the surveyor for study. Meanwhile, Dick Gordon orbited alone in the command module Yankee Clipper, photographing potential sites for future missions. After 2 days on the lunar surface, Conrad and Bean prepared Intrepid for liftoff. Moon dust coated every joint and cable, a fine abrasive that engineers feared could jam the ascent engine. With a roar barely loud enough to shake the vacuum, the tiny craft leapt from the surface in a bright arc, leaving behind the experiments, the surveyor relic, and their boot prints. They rendezvoused with Dick Gordon in the command module Yankee Clipper as Earth rose like a half-lit jewel beyond the porthole. For a few quiet minutes, the three men floated weightless, trading jokes and marveling at the blue and white globe that had almost lost them before the journey began. Trans-Earth injection was textbook, a long burn of the service module engine to break lunar orbit and sling them home. Yet controllers on Earth kept one eye on every gauge, aware that the same electrical scars from launch might still hide in the circuitry. 3 days later, the command module sliced into Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, a man-made meteor wrapped in a sheath of fire. Ionization blocked radio contact for 4 breath-holding minutes. Inside, temperatures climbed and the capsule shook like a living creature. Then, signal reacquired. Parachutes bloomed red and white against the clouds. Apollo 12 splashed into the Pacific Ocean, just 4 miles from the recovery ship USS Hornet. Conrad, Gordon, and Bean climbed out smiling, their mission officially flawless. Reporters cheered the precision lunar landing and smooth recovery. Almost no one asked about the double lightning strike that had nearly erased them from the sky. In post-flight briefings, NASA downplayed the incident as electrical anomalies. There were no dramatic press conferences, no primetime specials. The agency feared headlines about lightning rods and near explosions might shake public faith in the moon program, just as Apollo 13 was being readied. Internally, engineers raced to rewrite lightning launch protocols. Weather criteria were tightened, new detectors installed, and a small switch labeled SCE to AUX entered NASA lore as the obscure command that saved a mission. For decades, the story remained a footnote. Only in later years, through declassified transcripts and candid astronaut interviews, did the world learn how close Apollo 12 had come to becoming an obituary for the entire moon program. Today, the names Pete Conrad, Dick Gordon, and Alan Bean rarely appear beside Armstrong and Aldrin in history books. Yet their calm under pressure and a young controller's quick thinking kept a billion-dollar rocket from turning into a 363-foot lightning rod and saved humanity's second voyage to the moon.